You're in the temple of the rants, where I rant about whatever my $15 a month plus patrons want me to rant about. You can get one of these by becoming one of those. This one is for Bianco Magic Wizard, who wants me to rant about self-actualization, and if you personally may have already achieved it. Thanks, Digi. Well, self-actualization's not like an absolute state. It's not as though you one day wake up and have some epiphany and now, oh, now I'm self-actualized and I know what's going on with myself. But like, in a more general sense, I definitely spent a long time not really having a strong sense of self or of what I was trying to do. The main thing I knew about myself growing up is that, like, what I'm not, like that I don't feel the way other people do, that I am not interested in being this type of person, that I don't have this set of values. But like, what actually am I as a person? Like, what am I hoping to achieve? What do I want out of life? And that was a tough question for me because, coming into adulthood, I had a smattering of ideas about, like, I knew I wanted to be a creative of some denomination, but like, there wasn't any particular field that I felt extremely passionate about. I had happened to be, like, I saw myself as somebody who could be a writer because I had been writing ever since I was like a kid, but I didn't know what form that would take. Am I going to make movies? Am I going to write novels? None of that stuff was really clicking with me, but I just happened to be doing anime blogging all the time anyways. And so I just kind of fixated on that and tried to see if I could make it into a career somehow. And, after discovering YouTube, I did. But even after being on YouTube, there was always this sensation of like, okay, I'm doing this because I can and because it works, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's what I want to do. Like, I'm having fun with it. I'm passionate about it because I feel like I'm doing something that I'm good at, and that it's satisfying to do that. But does that mean that this is how I identify myself, that this is what I want to do with my life? Not necessarily. And I think that if I achieved any kind of self-actualization, it was in realizing that that was never going to come. That human beings are not so simple that they can be boxed into, I am this person who does this thing. I think we tend to almost be taught to look at ourselves that way because, if you think about what a society is, we live in a society. Most people have some kind of role they're out to fulfill. Look at, like, last names, right? You have people with last names like Smith because they were, at some point, their family was a smith, like they forged things. And you would have, like, that would be your thing. You would be the guy who forges things. You teach an apprentice how to do it, and that becomes their thing. Because there was a time when, like, that was the expectation of each person. It's like, you have a role to fulfill. You have a reason that you exist in this society. And there's still an element of that, but people are a lot more transient. There's a lot more, openness with all these jobs. You don't have to be one guy forever. You can be multiple things. You can switch between professions. When you go into college, you kind of have to, like, all right, pick a major. What are you going to do for the rest of your life? And it's like, by the time you finish with that, you might be like, well, it's not that I don't enjoy this, but is this really going to be, like, the thing I do? It's when there's so many possibilities of what you could do. So eventually I found myself in a position where I don't really look at myself as like, I'm a YouTuber, I'm a anime reviewer or whatever. It's like, I just kind of do whatever feels right to me in the moment and then try to find a way to make that make sense. It's like, okay, right now I really want to make music, and I know I can't just magically make money doing that because, it takes a lot to not only get good enough to be listenable, but then a whole lot more to get yourself actually heard, and it might not ever happen, so it's like a risk to go down that avenue. And a lot of the times, these careers, they really do require you to pour all of yourself into it to make progress, which can be scary in and of itself because you're not sure if, like, you want that to be a totalizing element of your life. But if I'm like, I really want to make a song, I'm going to do that and then find some way to just make that work in the context of what I'm doing as a whole. I would say that, like, I feel the worst when I feel like I have to make a certain kind of thing in order to keep myself afloat. When I feel like, oh man, I really like, I'm not making enough money, or I'm not, getting enough views on YouTube. I need to keep my career alive, so I need to go make like this certain type of video that will, help me to bounce back. And I really only had to do that over the last year because I put myself in a tough financial situation where I had to be making a certain amount in order to live. I've cut that down a lot so I don't feel that pressure as much now, and like I feel like going forward I'm going to try and, once again just kind of do what I want and then figure out how that makes sense, as opposed to being forced into doing, something that is how I'm identified, like what the world wants from me, just in order to pay the bills, which I think is the position most people find themselves in. Most people don't have the opportunity to just like stop doing their job for a couple of weeks because they want to be another person for a little while, and that's unfortunate. I think it would be nice if we found a way to formulate a society where people could more easily, don multiple hats, but it would have to be that everybody was just more skilled, that there were more gaps being filled by more people, that, a job wasn't looked at something like, okay, we need 10 people in this position, so we've got our 10. If, there was some way that there were multiple people who could be swapped in and out, but then reliability is also a huge factor in how we get anything done. It's just a complicated situation where, we've got a society brimming with possibilities, but we still need people to, be in place to make the wheels turn. So I guess if I feel that I have achieved self-actualization, it is merely in realizing what I wanted out of myself, that it wasn't something that was so concrete, so immediate. It wasn't like, I'm going to be a filmmaker, I'm going to be a writer. It's like, I'm going to be myself. I'm going to be whoever I need to be in the moment. And, finding May and starting a relationship and moving out on my own helped a lot with that. It helped me to recognize my priorities. I would even say that as recently as, moving to Boston and then out of Boston was part of my in continuing self-actualization, because I had this sort of doubt with myself that like the way I'm doing things will not be able to progress forever, that like eventually I'm going to hit this wall where I need to interact with more people, I need to, have more connections, I need to move to a bigger city, I need to like, pump up these certain elements of my life that, it's not that I necessarily inherently had an interest in doing those things. I just felt like I had to if I wanted to complete myself as a person. And then after going there, I kind of realized, okay, I was wrong. Like, these are not the things I need. What I need is to just have a better understanding of what I was trying to do in the first place, because, my natural inclinations lean a certain way. Like, I naturally am inclined to be somebody who is indoors, to be somebody who doesn't make a lot of plans with a lot of people, who doesn't easily work with people, like, I much prefer to just do my own thing and kind of be in my own world, and, putting myself back into a living situation where that made more sense, moving back to the place that sort of shaped that rhythm of life, helped me to come to even better terms with myself, to stop beating myself up over not being whatever, thing I've conjured in my mind that I'm supposed to eventually be. Like, this idea of what a mature version of myself would be. Really what a mature version of myself is an honest version of myself. One who is true to his feelings and who just, does what he immediately thinks is, right for himself. And yeah, going to Boston was sort of like the completion of that circle, because when I found myself in a position where I was being forced to do things I didn't want to do, or like, for instance, make a video every day for the month of August, and not that I necessarily had to do that, but just like the situation I was in, that was the best way out of it, to me at the time. It was the best idea I had, and like being in that position made me realize that, like, okay, what I value is not having to overcome some thing that I have completely fabricated and put on myself, you know? I don't know if this is still making sense, so I'm going to cut it off there, but yeah, self-actualization feels good, man.